Today, we're going to break down a new proposal from the City of Blaine, one that could fundamentally alter its land use and environmental review process. These aren't minor tweaks, they're changes that will affect how all future development gets approved and, just as importantly, how you, the public, can participate.
So, the city is rolling out a set of amendments to its municipal code. The official position is that these changes are designed to make the whole system better and more efficient.
And here's the city's own language on it. As you can see, the stated goals are all about clarifying, streamlining, and complying with state law. On the surface, that sounds reasonable, but when you actually dig into the text of the proposed ordinance, a very different picture starts to emerge, one with serious implications for public oversight.
Okay, so here's how we're going to walk through this. First, we'll look at the city's official reasoning. Then, we'll get into the details of what these changes actually do, the new barriers to participation, and the weakening of environmental review. We'll also put this into a broader context to see the pattern. And most importantly, we'll cover the specific changes that are needed and what you can do about it.
All right, let's start with the city's official justification. This is the foundation for their entire proposal, so it's important to understand how they're framing it. The city has issued what's called a Determination of Non-Significance, or a DNS. What that means is the city believes these rule changes are just procedural. They won't have any real-world negative environmental impact. Because of that, they're saying a full environmental impact study isn't needed. Now let's see what these procedural changes actually entail.
And this brings us to the first major effect of this proposal. The new rules, as written, create some pretty significant hurdles for everyday citizens who want to be involved in the development process.
At the heart of this is a new legal definition: aggrieved party. This term is absolutely crucial because it basically acts as a gatekeeper. To qualify as an aggrieved party, and therefore have any right to appeal a project decision, you must have submitted written comments during a very specific and very short 14-day window. If you miss that deadline for any reason, you forfeit your right to an appeal.
So what are the real-world consequences here? Well, first, it locks out anyone who doesn't find out about a project during that 2-week period. It also means community groups that might form in response to a project after that window has closed have no standing. The rule also gives a hearing examiner the power to dismiss an appeal quickly, before any environmental evidence is even presented. It creates a classic catch-22. You need standing to get a hearing, but you often need the hearing itself to present the facts that give you that standing.
Here's another significant barrier. Under the old rules, public hearings were automatic for most new housing developments. The proposed process flips that. Now, for any development under 100 lots, it's an opt-in system. That means if a citizen doesn't submit a formal written request for a hearing within 21 days, a public hearing simply won't happen. This makes it even harder to become a party of record and preserve your right to an appeal.
It's not just about limiting participation. The proposed amendments also chip away at the effectiveness of the State Environmental Policy Act, or SEPA. Now, SEPA is the main state law that ensures development projects get a proper environmental review. Just take a look at this table. The proposal triples the size of commercial buildings that are completely exempt from any environmental review, from 10,000 square feet up to 30,000. It also doubles the exemption for multifamily housing, from 10 units to 20. In practical terms, this means a lot more future projects will get built with no SEPA checklist, no public comment period, and absolutely no right to appeal on environmental grounds.
On top of that, the new ordinance says that decisions made by the city official get substantial weight. Now, that's a legal term of art, and it sets an incredibly high bar for anyone trying to appeal. An appellant would have to prove that the city's decision was clearly erroneous. That's the highest possible standard in administrative law, making a successful appeal almost impossible.
Now, these amendments aren't happening in a vacuum. To really understand what's at stake, it's important to see them as part of a larger pattern of changes to Blaine's governance that we've seen over the last few years.
Let's walk through this timeline. It really shows a clear progression. Back in 2021, the Citizen-led Planning Commission was changed from a decision-making body to a purely advisory one. Then, in a major appeal case in 2025, environmental evidence from citizens was largely dismissed on procedural grounds. Just a few months after that appeal was denied, the city is now proposing these new rules, which would essentially make those same restrictive procedures permanent city law.
To put this in perspective, let's compare Blaine's proposed process to its neighbor, Whatcom County. You can see Whatcom County follows state law on who can appeal. It doesn't require prior comment. Its appeal fees are lower and even have waivers for low-income residents. And critically, its hearing examiner is structurally independent. Blaine's proposed system is much more restrictive on every single one of these points.
So,
To bring this ordinance back in line with fair process and state law, several specific changes are necessary. We're going to outline exactly what needs to be fixed.
Here are the key reforms that are required. First, that aggrieved party definition has to be aligned with state law, which does not use prior comment as a barrier to appeal. Second, the opt-in hearing system needs to be reversed. Mandatory public hearings for plats should be restored. Third, the substantial weight provision has to be removed to ensure a fair hearing. Fourth, the city's own determination of non-significance for these rules should be withdrawn and a proper environmental impact statement needs to be done. And finally, all SEPA appeals must have an open record hearing, allowing new evidence to be presented.
The city's planning commission has scheduled a public hearing to move these changes forward. This means that the window for public input and for demanding these reforms is right now.
Here are the specific steps you can take. You can submit written comments, but they must be in before 4:30 p.m. on April 15th. The email address is crscomments@cityofblaine.com and make sure the subject line is Permit Process. You can also testify in person at the public hearing. That's on April 16th at 6 p.m. Keep in mind, testimony is limited to 3 minutes. In your comments, it's vital to demand that the Planning Commission adopts the specific changes we've just outlined.
The hearing is taking place at the City Council Chambers at 435 Martin Street. Your participation is absolutely critical to ensure that Blaine's review processes remain fair, accountable, and, importantly, compliant with state law.